Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to take a look at three options for producing dark skies along these sorts of lines with this image here. Converting to black and white and then reducing the sky down from the blue just to get some more mood coming through on that. We're going to start with a couple of very simple options. The first one in Adobe Camera Raw, and the technique can also be used in Lightroom, so if you do use Lightroom, don't worry about that. And then secondly, we're going to open up into Photoshop and use Nik Silver Efex Pro so you can see how to use control points to produce a similar option. And then lastly, we're going to do something a little bit more difficult, and that is using a selection, but we're going to use the sky replacement tool, and then we're going to bring in a separate sky and blur that down, darken it down, and I'll also show you a very simple black sky option where we bring in a layer and then just drop in black. I'm going to show you three options for darkening skies here. This first one is a sign on Route 66. So let's open this up in Adobe Camera Raw. To get deep blacks on these skies, the bluer the sky, the denser that blue is, the better. On the third image, I will do a cutout just to show you what you can do when you haven't got that deep blue or even any part of blue in the original image. Now with a sky like this, we have got a little bit of brightness down in the bottom corner here because of the natural gradient, and you may need to just burn that in. But this sort of blue will make a very quick and easy transition. We'll go over to black and white, and these controls on Adobe Camera Raw are very similar to Lightroom, so bear that in mind if you are using Lightroom. But straight away we get a decent black and white mix coming through here. Now you may not want to do more than this, but we know that this is blue down here, so we take the blue slider in the channel mixer here. Take the blue slider and pull that back all the way, and you can see that's quite dramatic, isn't it, in there? But you don't have to take it this far, so be careful with some images, and you don't want them over processed. Quite often I do see in my judging that some pictures, depending on the content, will be over processed and you get edges along lines like along here. It happens with trees and leaves as well, and the edges of buildings, so be very, very careful. And if you need to, just dial that back, because these edges here really can be a telltale sign of over processing. Now we will just dial these blues back a little bit, so not making it quite too intense, and just watch that with whatever you're working on with the sky and the surroundings. Always look at the aquas on the blues as well. Sometimes that will have an effect. It's actually affecting the sign here because there's some blues in the greens here, but balance those two where you want them. There's also some other colours here, so we'll look at the yellows and the greens as well. Going up to the yellows, we'll dial that back. Now we can see this ghosting around the edges here, so this sort of glow coming through, so this is what you're on watch for, and make sure you dial that back to where it disappears. So about there is correct, I think. But we can also take it the other way. We push it up into the brighter areas, and yeah, I think that looks quite a lot better actually, just putting in some high contrast there. And do watch out for any highlights that come out of this as well, so you may need to tone that back a little bit. So we'll take a look at these greens here as well, and just pulling that green slider back, we can see that does bring up the contrast. And then add in some more aquas there, we get a very high contrast image that's working well with that dark sky. So we do have a little bit of a faded area here, which is the natural light coming through from the bottom up as a gradient. So you may want to take a look at something like a gradient or some burning in if you want to just bring the density up in those areas. So that's the first one, quick and easy. I have the original saved here in the snapshots as a colour, so we'll revert back to the colour, open it up into Photoshop and work on it in Silver Efex Pro. So going over to Nik software and over to Silver Efex Pro here. We'll let that open up. To darken blue in Silver Efex Pro, it works in the old-fashioned way like filters, so you used to put a red filter onto your lens to make blue go dark, so that's what we have here, and you can see that comes in bang straight away, really quite quick and easy. Now you can actually adjust the yellows and the other colours down in the sensitivity here, so do have a play around with those if you need to. Now the colour filters will only change just one colour up here, so if you do need to look at these other colours, this is the area to be in. So that's Nik Silver Efex Pro, really very simple again. We'll work on this one next, which is Mirror Lake in the Grand Tetons in America, and a lovely blue sky again on this one, so that should work well. Watch out for trees, this is what this one is all about. So if we look at this tree line here, we can get some glowing happening, and I'll show you this exactly as it happens. And that really is the telltale sign that there's been some over-processing going on within landscapes in particular. So do watch that along these tree lines here. Anything to do with branches, leaves, these tree lines, just dial it back when it starts to happen. Let's go up to Silver Efex Pro and open up. You can see these deep blue skies do come in looking good already, but we'll put a red filter on. And there we go, very quick and easy, but we can see these edges here. There is a little bit of a glow coming on. Now some people do like to use the presets down the left here, so if you want to use them, just watch that they're not too harsh. That can happen quite a lot. So be selective, and what I'm going to show you though is literally some burning in, where we're going to go back to the neutral option, and there's no Silver Efex Pro presets coming through. So we go back to neutral, then head over to control points. So we're going to go up above the filters onto control points, click on a control point, and then bring it over to the area of sky that you want. We're going to set the size just with this slider here. We want something quite wide, and then we're going to take the brightness levels down to where you want it to be. Now once you've got it somewhere where you need it, just move that around, and then we can actually just watch how that gradient works along the image. Now what you do then is you press Alt on the keyboard and click on this, and it will duplicate, and we can move it over and have the same settings. And you can continue duplicating like this and moving things around and just making sure that things blend together well. So it's not needed in the middle there, but we'll come down to the bottom here. Again, duplicate that over, and we're getting a very natural gradient starting to occur now, and there's no glow around these trees here. So that's looking a lot more natural and not over processed. You can go back and tweak these control points if you want to get it a little bit darker, so it's where you want to take it, but do remember, keep it quite natural. And we can always do some work with a vignette if we want to, or maybe burning the edges. That's all available within Silver Efex Pro. So do take a look at that without getting all of this glowing going on around the edges. So that's Silver Efex Pro. Again, really lovely and easy, isn't it, to work on these skies. Let's move that out of the way and then work on a piece of architecture here, and also we're going to bring in this cloud background. Now I do want to show you how we get sometimes some glowing edges, and that would be important for this. A little bit harder this one, but we're going to take a look at those edges as they come in and how we can fix those. Now the sky here, I shot this on my phone. I do carry my phone around all the time, as we all do, and I have 40 megapixels RAW available on it. So if I see a good sky, out it comes and I take a shot. I'm just keeping an eye on highlights so that we have got a sky that's worth using. They come in as DNG files, so they are very big files, as you can see here, which is what we really want. So taking that back out, and we've got a light area here which we want to make sure goes into the brighter area of the actual picture of the architecture here. Let's get that up and working. Normally with a replacement like this, I use the pen tool, and we'll go around and work on the edges that way rather than a selection. And do look at my video on using the pen tool, and you'll find that very useful, particularly when we've got straight lines and curves. But with the latest Photoshop 2021, it's got to be worth looking at the Select Sky tool. So let's duplicate the background, which is Command or Control J before we start. And we come down, and you've got Select Sky there. Let Photoshop do its work. And already we can see that's a pretty good selection coming through. Do try this every time because it's worth it a lot of the times. We're going to come down and put a layer mask on here, but I'm going to press Alt on the keyboard as we do that, and that will actually invert the mask and make sure that we've got the sky that's actually come out and not the buildings itself. Let's now click on the background, and we're going to put an extra layer above that, because let's just fill that with black, and we'll show you a quick replacement there. And that's if you want really dark skies. But look at the selection, that's coming really well when you're using a black background. So Photoshop's done an amazing job there, really. Very little work to be done. Let's get this sky in. Just drag it over from the layers palette, and that's gone in above that layer. We can go over to the select tool now and move that sky where we need it to go. As I said, that bright area there, we really want to put into the brightest part of the sky. If you want to make the sky bigger or smaller, you can transform that as well. But we're watching this area in the bottom there, and that's where that bright area is. So that's where naturally I think this sky should be. Still going to have to work on some of this edge here as well. So we can see there is a little bit of a glow there that we might need to work on. So just pull that down a little bit more. About there. Now go over to your layers palette again, and we're going to go down and just bring in a black and white layer along the whole top. And if you want to change some of these, you can do, but we'll leave that for this video. Now to work on this sky and this edge, we can see at the moment that's looking pretty good down on the edges. But let's bring a curves layer in and darken the sky down. Going on to the sky layer, then come down to a curves adjustment layer. Once that's in, we're going to darken that, so pulling that curve down. I'm going to overdo this just so we can see some glow coming through there, and the top edge there in particular on the building, right along there, look, just a touch of glow. Not too bad down here, not too bad down here. I just think that's a natural transition, but I think we need to lighten the sky a little bit just to help with that. So onto the mask itself, and we're going to press B on the keyboard for the brush. Make sure that we've got the actual mask clicked on, and we're on black in the palette here. I always use a large feathered brush, so I'm doing that with the brackets keys there. Make sure I'm on a low opacity, so around about 20% there. You can use the numbers on the keyboard, so 4 would make that 40%, but we will come back to 20% with 2. And I make sure I'm on the curves on the mask and just start feeding in that brush and lightening that mask down where it comes along these glowing edges. Now let's fix this glow along this edge here, and the way to do this, even if I've selected this with a pen tool, we're using the select and mask, is activate the mask again by control clicking on the mask here, so you can see the marching ants are now activated. We want to move this mask inwards from the sky to the building, and just to make sure we're on the right side of the mask, if you select the picture and we're on the brush tool still and just paint across it, and you can see the selection is inside and we need it to be the other way around, so that we're actually working on the sky side. So Control Z to undo, click back on the mask, and we're going to go to select inverse, and then we're going to go back to select and expand. Expand the mask by between 1 and 3 pixels usually. So here we're going to go with 2 pixels. Then again back to select, and this time we're going to go down to modify and then feather. And we're just going to put a feather of just 1 pixel in there. Sometimes it's 2, but 1 should do it. So again, making sure we are on that mask there. Go to the brush, make sure it's black, and then we're on 100% flow, and then just paint, and it can be with a large brush size all the way down there. And that's going to move that edge inwards and allow that sky to come in from behind. We'll do the same down in this little section here, and we'll just improve that. Now, if you want to see what's happening, just press the space bar, and that activates the hand tool, and go to move it. It won't move the picture unless you're zoomed in further, but it makes the marching ants disappear, and we can see that edge now and how much that's improved. So that's done a great job there, and that's just enough. So Control D to select it, and that's the mask finished with there. Very quick way to work on that mask. Let's take a look at how that's changed by going into the history now, and take a look at this area at the top here on the building, and we'll just go to before, and you can see that glow is there. and then back to as we were when we finished, and we can see a huge improvement there as I said before. While we're here, one other thing I'll do with this sky is we'll go back to that layer of the sky and we'll duplicate that. That's Command J. And we're going to put some movement into the sky. So coming up to filters, and we go to blur. We could use motion blur, but we will use radial blur on this one. I'm going to go with zoom and good quality, an amount about 10. Normally the cursor's in the middle, but we're going to pull that down to the right there, and that will produce a fanned zoom coming from that right hand corner and look a lot natural for wind and the way the clouds are moving. So click on OK. If the amount isn't enough, you can go back and just with Control Z and try it again, but there we go, we've got a fairly realistic movement of the clouds using a neutral density filter coming through on that, all done within Photoshop itself. You can carry on and do some more dodging and burning if you want to make it heavier or even lighter in places. Take it where you want it to go, and these dark skies do work quite well with brutalist architecture here. And while I'm talking about brutalist architecture, this was shot on one of my workshops that I do in London, so once we're back out of lockdown and hopefully over the summer, I will be putting some more workshops in London together. So if you are interested, do go to lightacademy.co.uk and sign up, and you'll get my newsletters, and that will let you know when things are going on. There's also some Zoom training coming up over the next 2 or 3 months, so you can look out for that. But as far as dark skies goes, there's 3 ways for you, 2 very simple ones, one a lot more complex but gets the job done still, and hopefully you've picked up some tricks along the way. If you did like this, do smash that like button, and don't forget, if you would like to see more, do sign up for YouTube notifications on this YouTube channel. Thanks.